Hello everyone and welcome back to an episode of Uncle Smithy! This series, which has had a bit of a break whilst I was off with COVID, is basically me going through the game Kind Words, lo-fi beats to write to, spotting problems that I think I might be able to say something about, speaking about it on camera and then writing a message back to the person who has anonymously sent it in. It's going to be a ramble, these always are, but hopefully some people might find something useful. So the first one that comes up is straight away on the screen, actually. So it says here, I used to be creative, but I went through this depressive period for about 5 years and it's still going. It seems like I've lost my creative sense for the things like dance or art. Art or dance, rather. I don't know if there's anything I can do to remove this block. I have. Don't know what to do. So this one kind of spoke out to me, mainly because if I'm not eating or sleeping or working in my day job, I enjoy diving into creative arts, be that music, games. I'm less on the visual side of stuff, but I do enjoy films. And yeah, I think you can come at this at two different levels. You've got one where you're an actual creative person, you're making those things, and you hit kind of mental blocks on how you go creating. But there's also things about reconnecting with those different channels to kind of reignite your passion for them again, just as a person experiences those media forms or art forms, I guess. Both kind of levels are perfectly valid. I do both very amateurishly in the creative sense, but having a mental block or a creative block can apply for everything. It doesn't need to just be in art or something like that. It can happen in work as well. And quite often at work, I'm brought in to kind of help people get unstuck and see things from different points of view. So that's also another reason why I was interested in this one. So specifically from a creative point of view and arts and crafts, there's my number one tip is to go back to your favourites and find and enjoy and experience what sparked that kind of kindredness with your art form to begin with. So if it's dance, was there a particular routine that set off your kind of eyes alight to go, oh, I want to pursue that? If there's art, is there a particular artist that you like? Music, musicians, or an album that like utterly floors you? When you go back in time and you kind of experience that, especially if you've been quite numb to it for a while or you've parked it for a while, I think especially with music these days, we almost do music as a passive experience, and not many people sit down and give their full 100% focus to an album like you do to a film. And even films now are starting to become like, you can carry it on the small screen, great, I can have it there whilst I'm busy bustling around my commute getting to work. You're not giving it a undivided attention. And so I feel like art gets reduced down further. And unless you actively partake in going back and giving it your undivided attention, then I think your experience maybe slightly lessens and becomes numb over time. But going back and giving something its undivided full attention so that you fully immerse yourself in that kind of formative experience again may create that spark that kind of makes you go, oof. And sometimes that's all you need. From another creative point of view, I would do what I call do the opposite. And so for me, I'm going to do this in music terms because it's probably easier to explain. So I love rock, I love synth stuff, I love chiptunes, game music, piano, angry pop music, alternative stuff, weird and wonderful things. But there's two genres that I generally cannot stand, and they were jazz and rap. And I struggled with those genres. But what I've learned from running a music blog for 12, 13 years, starting up, working towards opening an indie net label, doing my own music, all of that kind of stuff, it's allowed me to dive into these genres, and specifically jazz has moved a long way for me more than rap. But I can dive into those genres of music now and feel like it's an alien world that kind of I can borrow things from and hear music that I'm not normally always alert to or immersed in, because when we know what we like, we kind of stick with what we like to a degree, and so you run the risk of it becoming routine and the same and not informative. It's kind of, you stay in your own box. And I appreciate that you can kind of apply this to the entire world, and it's like book culture and food and all of that kind of stuff. It works the same. If you go for something completely different, you might find that inspires you in a different way of movement, a different way of painting or drawing, because you're taking a different style and thinking, what elements of that could I borrow and weave that into my current work? It might just as a passive viewer or listener kind of make you go, cool, that's a bit weird, and I wasn't used to that before. One of the other ways that I do that with music is I look at specific instruments, and that's one of the reasons why I thoroughly enjoy world music under the banner of world, because you can kind of do like country roulette and just be like, what are the national instruments for you? And you can pull it out and dive in, and then you think, God, how can I use that in a different way that is not traditional? And then that sparks creative ideas and juices. Taking that kind of away from an artistic perspective, and apologies for my creaky piano stool chair, if you're looking for interesting ways to get unstuck, mind mapping is a really, really good one. And just put kind of like your goal in the middle, and then just let it kind of bubble out on different ideas or thoughts, and then break it down further to the next level and the next level. Because I think sometimes I get dragged into detail very, very quickly, and I don't look at what you could term the strategic overview, where you need to kind of get some ground rules in first to work within. And sometimes that can be a good framework to help you get unstuck with something, or it could be a great framework to go, now try a piece of work that includes none of those. So yeah, that's what I got to say. I'll write a little reply and see how we get on. Okay, very simple one for this one. I recommend going back to what made your eyes sparkle during the formative times you found those art forms. That can spark a new passion for them. Similarly, you can try opposite versions of things you like, music, dance, art, genres or styles, etc., to find new ways at looking at things. It might give you a new perspective. Good luck. Creative blocks can be a pain. Oh, I agree. Send it off. Thank you very much. Question 2 is also a bit about an inner spark, I guess, as well, but from a career perspective. So this one is just, what is everyone's career? Are you happy with it? Did you realise it was your thing, and anything you'd change about it? And the reason why this question is interesting to me is because me and my partner are having discussions about his future career path, I guess. And I had a similar kind of meltdown when I had finished education, was like, I'm going off into work and all of that kind of stuff. And I had quite a defined career path that I kind of wanted to take, but I didn't have the wherewithal and kind of understanding to know how to get there, essentially. And so I'd fallen from job to job to job. And that was a little bit systemic, because where I live and still live now is not really seen as a great area in the UK, in Essex. And so getting into retail was kind of all that was ever expected. You weren't necessarily expected to have a trade. You weren't pushed for anything like that. And so I started off in retail and was trying to work my way up into that kind of way. And then once I'd got business acumen, I wanted to launch my own company and do my own thing. I did that in 2008. And what rolled along? A wonderful recession. And so what kind of bore out from that is that if you are considering careers, or if you're thinking about careers and you're wedded to a certain path, by all means go for it, drive, make that your priority. But have not backup plans, frame it as alternatives. Because if you do it as a backup plan, it's always seen as lesser than, and it's a small nuance in like phrasing and terminology, but it might change your mindset a little bit for like this might be my primary option, but I have all of these other things kind of lined up just in case, that I can turn my qualifications or my experience or my personality to. And it means that you won't necessarily be disappointed all the time, because an economy can change so quickly. I mean, we've just seen it with the pandemic, haven't we? We had it in the 2008 recession. My business was open 3 months. I'd left a permanent job to go into self-employment and to run my own business, with some great contracts being set out that all got retracted and left me unemployed, basically, with losing money monthly. In hindsight, that was probably a great thing, because what it then done was bring me into the civil service, and I actually got a job at the job centre. Now, I'm kind of a little bit stuck on exactly the kind of ins and outs on what I can say about working on the civil service, because I still work for the civil service. I still work for the job centres, just not actually in the job centres. I'm more in a digital design, corporate communications type role, I guess, now. But I spent 5 years on the front line dealing with people. And what I found was that actually what makes me happy in a job is being able to help people and make a difference. And then with every role that I've then gone on to do afterwards, I need to understand what I do makes a difference and to quantify it. And that brings me happiness, less around necessarily what I do. And that's been a bit of like a in my 30s revelation for me, I guess. Because when I was working in job centres, I used to be what is called a lone parent advisor. So quite often, well, not often, but you'd get, say, a single mum would come along with some children, and sometimes they'd fled an abusive relationship. And they literally had the clothes that they'd got on them and a couple of carrier bags of things of their kids or something like that. And you would work with them to get them from like the emergency overnight accommodation and some safety immediately, almost bordering social care work, to try and get them house and sorted immediately to stop their immediate worries. But then to work with them to build their confidence. Some of them may have not been allowed out and to interact with the world properly. So there would be social skills potentially that they need to kind of understand. I remember working with someone who was not allowed any technology, so even going to apply for a job was like new territory. Some of them might want a specific qualification. In Essex, it was always, we're going to do hair and nails quite often. And what's the other one? Tanning beds, like portable tanning beds. Deary me. But if they wanted to run their own business, then we'd help them try and get up and running with all of that. And what was really rewarding with that job was seeing them go from the state of which they arrived in to being self-sufficient and leaving us to not return again. And it was quite rewarding, because some of those journeys would go over several years, and you'd go with them along the way, and you'd kind of build up a kind of, I'm going to say professional friendship, because you're not like friends, but mentorship sounds wrong as well. But you do have that relationship that kind of builds along as you go. And that was very rewarding. When I then moved into the more digital design side of things for the job centres and written communications, working with lots and lots of councils and things like that to build up support systems for getting people online and learning digital skills and all of that kind of stuff. It was a completely different kind of environment to work in, but I could still always see the difference that I was making, and that's what's kept me happy all the way since. And now where I'm in a different type of role again, it's about quantifying when I'm able to say I have changed X, Y, and Z, and that means that our staff can do blah and therefore help X amount of people. that's what gives me the job satisfaction. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily my thing, but it's really important, I think, when you're looking at careers and understanding things, that you understand your why. If there's anything that I'd change about it, and I think this is true of all government departments, is that you, by the nature of being a government department, you're never truly on a cutting edge forefront of anything. And because you're such a large organisation, changing culture, changing ideas, and the intrinsic red tape that is surrounding on everything, and the governance to try and get something through, is laborious, to say the least. And I don't think this is true of all huge organisations. It's the beauty of working in a startup is that there's like maybe only one or two of you, and you're like, we're going to change something, we'll change it now, and it just affects everyone in the room. If you change something fundamentally in where I work, you're changing it for like 90,000 staff. So it takes time to get those cogs churning. And I just wish that we could be a little bit more flexible with things like that. But it's getting better. It is getting better. I will say that before I end up getting struck off. But yeah, I think my kind of overall thing with careers, think about what you want for a top option, but always have alternatives backed around you, because especially if you're going for something that's super, super niche and there's only a few spots and they're like prized spots and you're aiming high, don't put all of your eggs into those baskets, because you'll be forever disappointed, even if you end up on like tier 2 and you're like, say like, I must get to Formula 1 to be a Formula 1 driver, and you get to Formula 2, that's still pretty damn amazing. So don't be disappointed. Hope that makes sense. Appreciate that might be a bit rambly. Question 3, and I'm really sorry, I accidentally clicked stop on the thing and then wrote the message and sent it. So, soz. But you know what I said with that one. Question 3. Hi, I'm in a long distance relationship now and wonder how I can keep the spark going. Any advice for someone in the same situation? Oh yes, I'm there with you. Cheers. Although I'd say ours is medium distance, but pandemic, y'all. I feel like that is a really low-hanging fruit joke, but never mind. So my advice for any kind of distance relationships, although I'd say it applies to anyone really, is communication is key, and making time for each other. Now, we make sure that we communicate every day, even if that's just through some texts back and forth or a photo back and forth or something like that, just so that we're constantly in each other's kind of mind, in the background as you go through the day. And we have I call them the ketchups, as in like ketchup tomato sauce, but they are catch-up evenings that we have, and they are exclusively like us two chatting to each other, normally through with the webcam as well, talking about like the last few days that we've had, doing something together as well, even if that is watching something that we've chosen together to watch. Schitt's Creek was a great one, and so was The Good Place. They were our shows that we found together. Could be playing a game, could be doing something slightly different. We were struggling for interesting ideas through the pandemic as well. I know I've done some videos on this channel around Hyper Japan, and they had to do Hyper Japan online last year, and they've been doing like online workshops, so I've been looking to try and get us onto those. And I was trying to get onto a Stonehenge tour, like a virtual one, because even in the Stonehenge tour you don't actually go to Stonehenge, so I was like, well, I can just sit in my living room and enjoy it together. And it's about finding new and interesting things and experiences to do to keep having shared experiences that aren't just texting on a phone, because then that becomes monotonous. And so if you're able to bring in different and new experiences, I think that helps you keep the spark alive as well. Similarly, I would say don't be a dirt bag. Or don't be a dirty stop out. I guess if you, how do I say this politely? If you're gonna show all the meat and veg all day, every day on every single photo, there is no point keeping up the spark going, because you've revealed everything. This is just me gleaming from various dating apps where people would like message you and they'd be like, hey sexy, how you doing? And then next would be through like a completely naked photo, and I'd be like, well, I've seen it all now, I'm done, thanks, bye. This is just a personal thing. Maybe completely naked pictures all day long is what floats your boat, but I feel like if you get too much of a good thing, you get numb to it. So yeah, that's really it. Communication all the way. Communication and dedicated time for each other. Okay, and here we go with the answer. Communication and dedicated time for each other. Similar situation for 2 years, largely stuck apart through the pandemic. We've also been looking at different online experiences to share to create new memories, like events, workshops, silly things. They help keep us entertained and on the same page. I'm sure it helps if you just fancy each other anyway. Okay, last question then for this episode of Uncle Smithy. And again, it is down to motivation and that inner spark. So I think we've found our theme for this episode. I have to get uni work done, but I really can't get motivated. Context, I suffer from depression, so of course getting motivated is hard, but I can't even draw for personal art even. I've been sleeping more lately too, which isn't good. I just feel bleak and down. Any suggestions? So my main suggestion with this, especially where you're talking about sleeping more and more, is that there's kind of a tipping point, I think. Sometimes you just need to be able to do a shut away day for like mental health days, I guess, for a reason to just recharge and get things going. And I think that is perfectly valid and perfectly fine. If you find, though, that your entire days are just sleeping and you're getting up and you're functioning for a couple of hours a day and that's repeating on cycle, then that's when it's affecting your life and you need to kind of get back to it again. And one of the interesting ways that I found have worked for quite a few other people that I know who do suffer from depression, and that always translates into massive sleeping issues and a lack of a sleeping pattern, is to set a sleep routine. And that means like religiously at 11 o'clock at night in bed, or 10 o'clock. And even if you aren't feeling sleepy at that specific time, the act of preparing to go to bed starts to put your mind into like the calming down stuff. And that's around like at least half hour beforehand, getting rid of all digital interactions so that you don't necessarily have like screen apnea going on in your eyes, so that you've been affected by that blue light, for example. It could be that you make sure that you do something that relaxes and calms you for half an hour before you go into bed. It's also, and it depends, if you're in uni, this might be a bit of an issue if you're like working all in one room. But there's also around segmenting out to make sure that your bed is only for sleeping in or other naughty things. And that you kind of have bed hygiene is probably the best way I can describe it off the top of my head. I want to say sleep hygiene, but it goes beyond that because it's about barriers. And I found this actually a big issue working from home for the last year, is that my living room, which is a state, as you can see, is also my working area, is also my creative area, is also my filming area over there. And so when you've got something that is so multifunctional, if you are studying on your bed or in bed, then that means that your bed is no longer associated with sleep and rest, and therefore you can't kind of segment and pull away from it. And so it's about making sure that even if you are literally getting into a chair and you are facing away from your bed, it's that mental divide that will make sure that your bed stays associated with sleep and rest and calm, and not the fear and worry of study. And so you can start to compartmentalize it geographically in your house or flat or room, depending on what you've got. Again, all of the previous stuff around getting motivated for art or creativity reasons from the very first question all apply here as well. And that could be just discovering new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of doing stuff. And you can kind of let that wash over you, or it could be that you just go back to something that you loved and that kind of got you sparked into art or music or film or whatever it is that you've got to kind of get that spark going again. But in order to, with that kind of geographical separation of work versus rest, that then helps you get that sleep routine up and running, and that then helps structure your day. And I would say there is no harm in being quite regimented and planning your day, in that you have a couple of hours of uni work, then you schedule in a couple of hours for other activity, and then you come back to uni work and then do another couple of hours of another activity. And the reason why I kind of suggest this, and especially around breaking it up, is that it starts to help you kind of commit to those couple of hours of being a short, sharp, focused piece of motivation, rather than being like, I've got a massive dissertation to finish, and it seems so huge and therefore overwhelming, and so you don't know where to start. And so focusing it down into chunking it into small things, I think really, really helps. And then what that also does as well is that you've earned a reward, which then lets you kind of switch off for a bit, and that can be quite helpful and rewarding. One flip side that's worthwhile remembering with all of that as well is that sometimes if you aren't motivated and you know you've got something going on in the background, you start to guilt yourself into not enjoying your procrastination and off time, which then means that you don't fully switch off, which means that you don't then feel like you've stepped away from anything. So when you come back to doing the work, you're already bored of it and fed up and pissed off with the whole thing before you've begun. So I don't really have too many tips for that, except for when you switch off and you do something entirely, it's about that geographical, like, pack away the uni work, pack away all of your notes and all of that kind of stuff, even if it's just in a folder on the same PC that you use for everything else, so that you don't see it and access it and you're not tempted to go in, so that you mentally have switched off and moved away, so that you feel like you've had time away, so that when you come back to something it feels a bit more fresh. You are naturally a bit more like, right, next couple of hours, this is what I'm at. Oh, this is might have sparked a new idea whilst you kind of away, and you might just see something in a different light that can help you out. And I'm a strong believer in that as well. I also am a really bad work all nighter. And so sometimes I will get into a frenzied zone where I know that I can just keep going and going and going on something and just smash it all out. And if I know I'm on a roll, I'll just keep going through it again. But quite often that is then followed by a period or an extended period of complete compartmentalizing and moving away from something afterwards that enables me to have that rush. So again, everyone's different. That's what personally works for me. It might be of interest or use to someone else. Okay, so here we go. I've put use your bed for sleep. If you study in it, then it starts to get associated with angst of uni, etc. I do a sleep regime. I don't personally. I'm just saying, like, in general. It saves on space. Where I go to bed by X PM and get up at X AM, so that it trains my mind and body to unwind at certain times. I also chunk my days into work and then play, and actively pack away and move to different parts of the room so that it feels different and I don't drift back. That is something that I do regularly, and it's really, really helped me, especially during the pandemic. By doing smaller chunks of work and play, I feel less guilty about procrastinating, and I'm able to switch back and forth between work and rest. I needed to put with ease, easier. There we go. Send. And there we go. Thank you very much for this episode of Uncle Smithy. I hope it was interesting. We'll do a couple more episodes of this before we round out season 1. And we'll have survived, hopefully, the large chunk of the pandemic, mentally or otherwise. You guys all take care. Thanks for watching higherplanegames.com or on the YouTube channel. Bye. Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a completely independent media outlet supported by people like you. The goal is to create the best possible content that cultivates a richer indie scene for games as well as music and entertainment. To find out more and to get involved, visit patreon.com/higherplane network. Your support makes all the difference, and in return you'll gain access to bonus content and downloads. Thank you for watching.